For years, the Beverly Hillbillies was pure comedy gold. But behind the laughter was a far more painful reality. Sudden deaths, addiction battles, and devastating accidents changed the cast's lives forever. Now, let's take a closer look at how these beloved stars tragically passed away. Buddy Ebsen as Jed Clampett. Buddy Ebsen was born on April 2, 1908 in Belleville, Illinois. At 54 years old, he played Jed Clampett, the calm, sharp-minded patriarch who leads his family from poverty to oil fortune in the Beverly Hillbillies. His quiet authority and steady warmth gave the series its backbone and helped turn it into a television phenomenon. Yet the man audiences saw as stable had grown up in difficult early years. His father, Christian Ludolf Ebsen Sr., ran dance studios, and the family relocated repeatedly from Illinois to Florida, forcing young Buddy to adapt quickly. Financial collapse during the Florida land bust cut short his college studies and pushed him toward performance. He found work on Broadway and appeared in Broadway Melody of 1938 and Captain January with Shirley Temple, building a name as an agile dancer. That instability followed him into marriage. In 1936, he wed Ruth Cambridge. The union ended in 1945 under pressure from career demands and his growing dependence on alcohol. His second marriage to Nancy Wolcott in 1945 lasted nearly 40 years and brought 5 children, yet distance and tension eventually led to divorce in 1985. During the years he starred in the Beverly Hillbillies and later Barnaby Jones, fame masked private strain. His third marriage to Dorothy "Dottie" Knott in 1985 brought calmer years, but his outspoken attack on co-star Nancy Kulp during her 1984 political campaign shocked fans and shattered a friendship that had once seemed unbreakable. The deepest wound came from Hollywood itself. Cast as the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz, 1939, Ebsen inhaled aluminum dust from his makeup and was rushed to the hospital with severe breathing complications. He was replaced in the film, and the respiratory damage lingered for the rest of his life. Decades later, even while reinventing himself in television dramas, he still battled chronic lung problems rooted in that single decision. Sadly, he died at 95 on July 6, 2003, in Torrance, California, from respiratory failure. He was buried at Pacific Crest Cemetery in Redondo Beach. His estimated net worth at death was around $3 million, earned from decades in film and television and a valuable rare coin collection. Irene Ryan as Daisy Granny Moses. Irene Ryan was born on October 17, 1902, in El Paso, Texas. At 60 years old, she played Daisy Granny Moses, the fierce, sharp-tongued grandmother of the Clampett clan, in the Beverly Hillbillies. Her explosive humor and fearless delivery made Granny unforgettable and earned her 2 Emmy nominations. Behind that fiery presence was a childhood shaped by hardship. Ryan began performing at age 11 to help support her family, winning small contests and stepping into vaudeville before most children finished school. Touring from town to town limited her formal education, but sharpened her stage instincts. She performed as part of the duo Tim and Irene and later appeared in films like Oh, My Darling Clementine and radio programs with Bob Hope, working tirelessly to stay visible in a competitive industry. Marriage did not bring comfort. She married comedian Tim Ryan in 1922. Years of touring strain ended in divorce in 1942. Her second marriage to Harold E. Knox in 1946 lasted 15 years before dissolving in 1961. She had no children, and colleagues often described her as devoted to work above all else. The final chapter unfolded on a Broadway stage. In 1973, while starring in Pippin, Ryan collapsed during a performance. Doctors diagnosed inoperable glioblastoma along with arteriosclerotic heart disease. Even after the diagnosis, she tried to continue performing, refusing to surrender to illness until her body forced her to stop. Sadly, she died at 70 on April 26, 1973, in Santa Monica, California. She was laid to rest at Woodlawn Memorial Cemetery beside her sister. Her estimated net worth was about $2 million, built from television success and Las Vegas engagements. Donna Douglas as Ellie Mae Clampett. Donna Douglas was born on September 26, 1932, in Pride, Louisiana. At 30 years old, she played Ellie Mae Clampett, the animal-loving, innocent Southern beauty, in the Beverly Hillbillies. Her charm and natural warmth turned Ellie Mae into one of the most recognizable faces on American television. She grew up in rural Louisiana, helping with chores and family responsibilities from a young age. Life was simple but demanding, and opportunity felt distant. Determined to escape limitation, she moved to New York and began modeling before landing small television roles and film appearances such as Lover Come Back and The Twilight Zone. Her breakthrough came when she was chosen from hundreds of actresses for the Beverly Hillbillies. Her private life mirrored that struggle. She married Roland Bourgeois Jr. in 1951 and gave birth to her only son, Danny Bourgeois, in 1954. The marriage ended the same year, leaving her a single mother. In 1971, she married Robert M. Leeds, a director on the Beverly Hillbillies, but that union also ended in divorce in 1980. As roles diminished and financial pressures mounted, she turned toward faith, later becoming a gospel singer, inspirational speaker, and author of books such as Donna's Critters and Kids and the cookbook Southern Favorites with a Taste of Hollywood. Public lawsuits, including a high-profile case against Disney and later Mattel, added further stress to her later years. Then came the final battle. Donna Douglas was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, an aggressive illness often discovered too late. The disease advanced quickly, and despite her public appearances and strong faith, her health declined. She faced the diagnosis with quiet resolve, continuing to connect with fans even as her body weakened. Finally, she died at 82 on January 1, 2015, at Baton Rouge General Hospital in Louisiana. She was buried at Bluff Creek Cemetery in East Feliciana Parish. Her estimated net worth at the time of her death was around $1 million, modest compared to the fame she once held. Raymond Bailey as Milburn Drysdale. Raymond Bailey was born on May 6, 1904, in San Francisco, California. At 58 years old, he played Milburn Drysdale, the greedy yet comedic banker desperate to control the Clampett fortune, in the Beverly Hillbillies. His sharp delivery and calculating expressions made Drysdale one of television's most memorable comic antagonists. His early life was restless and uncertain. As a young man, Bailey tried and failed to break into Hollywood, working odd jobs including laboring at film studios and later sailing as a merchant seaman across Asia and Europe. He even worked on a pineapple plantation in Hawaii before returning to acting in his 30s. Persistence slowly paid off with roles in films such as The Incredible Shrinking Man, 1957, and Vertigo, 1958. Still, success came late, and years of rejection hardened him. Marriage offered companionship but little softness. In 1951, he married Gabby George, and they remained together until his death, though he had no children. Colleagues often described him as difficult and temperamental on set, a trait some linked to years of frustration and rumored stimulant use. As the series neared its end, Bailey began experiencing symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. Memory lapses grew noticeable, and by 1975 he retired from acting after brief appearances in Disney films like Herbie Rides Again. The progressive illness eroded the sharp wit that had defined Milburn Drysdale, isolating him in his final years. Tragically, he died of a heart attack at age 75 on April 15, 1980, in Irvine, California. His body was cremated, and his ashes were scattered at sea. At the time of his death, his estimated net worth was approximately $1 million, earned largely through television. Nancy Kulp as Jane Hathaway. Nancy Kulp was born on August 28, 1921, in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. At 41 years old, she played Jane Hathaway, the sharp, loyal secretary who kept Drysdale's chaos from collapsing, in the Beverly Hillbillies. Her intelligence and dry humor made Jane the quiet engine of every banking scene, giving the comedy its bite. That controlled, precise energy came from an early life filled with pressure to be practical. Her father, Robert Tilden Kulp, traveled for sales work, and her mother, Marjorie Snyder Kulp, carried the discipline of a teacher and principal, so Nancy grew up learning to perform well and never ask for softness. She pushed through school anyway, earning a journalism degree in 1943, then a master's in English and French, and she even joined the U.S. Naval Reserve in World War II, leaving service in 1946 as a lieutenant. When she turned toward acting, the choice felt like betrayal to the life she was trained to live, and she fought for every inch of space, landing roles in films like Sabrina and A Star is Born, then building television momentum with The Bob Cummings Show. Her marriage became another tight room with no air. She married Charles Malcolm Dacus in 1951, and the relationship collapsed into divorce by 1953, leaving her with no children and a private life that grew more guarded each year. Hollywood gossip about her sexuality followed her like a shadow, and the more she tried to work past it, the more the industry quietly reduced her to supporting status, even after her Emmy-nominated turn as Jane. When she later ran for Congress in 1984 as a Democrat, the shock was not the loss, it was the betrayal. Buddy Ebsen publicly backed her opponent and branded her too liberal, and that one radio message severed a bond the audience assumed was real. After the defeat, she retreated toward academia, teaching and working in college settings where she could finally control the room. Her health then turned into a countdown. A long-time smoker, Nancy was diagnosed with cancer in 1990 and underwent chemotherapy, but the disease spread. Even as her body failed, she gave a carefully worded interview that many read as an indirect confirmation of her being gay, a quiet admission that explained years of isolation, and why Hollywood had always kept her at arm's length. Nancy Kulp died at 69 on February 3, 1991, in Palm Desert, California, from metastatic cancer. She was buried at Westminster Presbyterian Cemetery in Mifflintown, Pennsylvania. Her estimated net worth at death was about $500,000, small for someone whose face lived in reruns, and a harsh reminder that fame did not protect her from industry exile. Harriet E. MacGibbon as Margaret Drysdale. Harriet E. MacGibbon was born on October 5, 1905, in the United States. At 57 years old, she played Margaret Drysdale, the icy, blue-blooded wife who policed status like a weapon in the Beverly Hillbillies. Her stiff elegance made the Drysdale household feel like a separate world, sharpening the show's class clash and making every Clampett visit feel like an intrusion. Her early years carried a quieter kind of loss. Coming from a middle-class background, she faced financial strain after her father died, and that pressure pushed her toward work that required steel rather than comfort. She found discipline in theater, joining stock companies and earning Broadway credibility from the mid-1920s onward. She performed in productions tied to major stage history, including You Can't Take It With You, and later became a familiar television presence with guest spots on shows like Bewitched. That same need for control echoed through her marriages. She married producer William Reno Cain in 1930 and had a son, William MacGibbon Cain, born in 1933, but the relationship ended in divorce in 1942. That same year, she married writer Charles Corwin White, and the marriage lasted until his death on Christmas Day in 1967. The deepest blow arrived in 1977 when her son died before her, a shock that turned her private life into a quiet aftermath. Her health also became an ending she could not rehearse away. MacGibbon struggled with lung illness, and it worsened as she aged, limiting her strength and narrowing her world. The decline was gradual but unforgiving, the kind of sickness that turns breath into effort and effort into exhaustion. Harriet E. MacGibbon died at 81 on February 8, 1987, from pulmonary complications. She was cremated, and her ashes were interred in niche 61046 at the Columbarium of Remembrance at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Los Angeles. Her estimated net worth at death was around $1 million, earned through decades of steady work across stage, radio, film, and television. Bea Benaderet as Pearl Bodine. Bea Benaderet was born on April 4, 1906 in New York City. At 56 years old, she played Pearl Bodine, the warm yet sharp-tongued cousin determined to secure a better future for her son in the Beverly Hillbillies. Her presence anchored the show's rural heart and later led her to even greater fame as Kate Bradley in Petticoat Junction. The strength she brought to Pearl was shaped by early responsibility. She trained in voice and performance from a young age and was already earning money on radio as a teenager, mastering accents that later defined her work on the Jack Benny program and as the voice of Betty Rubble in the Flintstones. Success came steadily, but it was built on long studio hours, relentless rehearsal, and the pressure of never appearing weak in a competitive industry. Her first marriage to actor Jim Bannon in 1938 slowly unraveled under the weight of his touring schedule and long absences. By 1950, she filed for divorce, left to raise their two children, Jack and Maggie, largely on her own while juggling radio and television commitments. In 1958, she found happiness again with sound effects technician Eugene Twombly, a quiet, steady presence in contrast to Hollywood's noise. Their marriage was affectionate and stable, but fate was merciless. After Bea's death, Twombly suffered a massive heart attack and died just 4 days later, as if unable to endure the loss. Behind the laughter of Petticoat Junction, Bea was hiding a devastating truth. A spot on her lung discovered in 1963 returned aggressively in 1967. Diagnosed with lung cancer, she endured surgery and radiation while insisting on continuing to film. A lifelong heavy smoker, she had reduced but never fully escaped the damage. She missed episodes, returned bravely to set, then collapsed again as the disease advanced. By September 1968, pneumonia compounded her condition, and the vibrant voice that had filled radio waves for decades grew faint. Bea Benaderet died at 62 on October 13, 1968, at Good Samaritan Hospital in Los Angeles from lung cancer and pneumonia. She was buried at Valhalla Memorial Park Cemetery in North Hollywood. Her estimated net worth at death was around $1.5 million, earned from a pioneering career across radio, animation, and television. Just 4 days after her funeral, Eugene Twombly was laid to rest beside her. Sharon Tate as Janet. Trago. Sharon Tate was born on January 24, 1943, in Dallas, Texas. At 20 years old, she played Janet Trago, the beautiful young secretary, in the Beverly Hillbillies. Though her role was brief, her striking presence hinted at the stardom that would soon surround her. Her childhood was marked by constant relocation due to her father's military career. Moving from city to city, even overseas to Italy, she struggled to maintain friendships and often felt painfully shy. That loneliness quietly shaped her ambition. By the early 1960s, she was modeling and taking small television roles, determined to prove she was more than a pretty face. Breakthrough performances in The Fearless Vampire Killers, and especially Valley of the Dolls in 1967, earned her a Golden Globe nomination and the label of Hollywood's most promising new star. Her love story with director Roman Polanski felt like a modern fairy tale. They married in London in January 1968, glamorous and inseparable, and soon moved into a home on Cielo Drive in Los Angeles. She was pregnant by early 1969 and spoke excitedly about motherhood, balancing scripts and nursery plans. Yet Hollywood's glittering circle carried hidden darkness, and their home became a gathering place for friends and strangers alike. a detail that would later haunt the city. On the night of August 8th to 9th, 1969, while 8.5 months pregnant, Sharon Tate was brutally murdered in her home by members of the Manson family cult. She died at 26, and her unborn son, later named Paul Richard Polanski, died with her. The crime shocked the world, shattered Hollywood's illusion of safety, and marked a violent end to the optimism of the 1960s. She was buried at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City, California, with her unborn child in her arms. At the time of her death, her net worth was estimated at about $45,000. Charles Lane as Foster Finney. Charles Lane was born on January 26, 1905, in San Francisco, California. At 58 years old, he played Foster Finney, the strict, no-nonsense authority figure, in the Beverly Hillbillies. The character hit like a cold gavel in a world full of charm and chaos, and audiences loved to hate him. That hard edge didn't come from nowhere. As an infant, he lived through the aftermath of the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, and the stories of fear, rebuilding, and survival sat in the background of his earliest years. He grew up watching adults treat stability like a job you could lose overnight, and that mentality followed him into the Pasadena Playhouse years, where he learned discipline the brutal way: show up perfect or disappear. Even when he later appeared in films like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and You Can't Take It With You, he carried the same "don't waste my time" energy that casting directors kept buying. Off camera, his private life shocked people who expected him to be as sour as his screen persona. In 1931, he married Ruth Cavell, and they stayed together for more than 70 years, an almost unheard-of streak in Hollywood, raising 2 children, Charles Jr. and Alice. While his face became familiar in It's a Wonderful Life and countless TV roles, Ruth remained the steady center he returned to, the one place where the jerk characters didn't follow him home. He kept working into his 90s, then his 100th year, even giving a final performance at 101, as if refusing to let old age dictate the closing credits. Sadly, he died at 102 on July 9, 2007, of natural causes in his Brentwood home in Los Angeles. His son later described the moment as eerily simple: a conversation around 9 p.m., then his eyes closed and his breathing stopped. With an estimated net worth around $2 million, his legacy was the staggering weight of endurance. Phil Silvers as Shifty Schaefer. Phil Silvers was born on May 11, 1911, in New York City. At 58 years old, he played Shifty Schaefer, the fast-talking comedic con man, in the Beverly Hillbillies. He made the scams feel funny, then made you realize you were laughing at something painfully true. That instinct was built early. He started performing around age 11 to bring in money, learning fast that a joke could feed you when nothing else would. He grew up with the pressure of being useful every night, and by the time he hit bigger stages, the hustle was already wired into him. Even before TV fame, he was grinding through vaudeville, Broadway, and film work that never stopped, the same energy that later powered the Phil Silvers Show and roles in movies like It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. His relationships didn't get the happy ending his characters sold on screen. He married twice, first to Jo Carol Dennison, then to Evelyn Patrick, and both marriages ended in divorce, leaving him with 5 daughters and a private life that felt more complicated than his punchlines. The darkest thread was what he did to himself. Gambling wasn't a hobby. It was a compulsion that could wipe him out in one night, and he admitted to crushing lows that looked a lot like chronic depression. In August 1972, he suffered a stroke during the run of Forum, leaving him with slurred speech. Yet he kept working anyway, pushing through TV guest roles and late career parts, as if stopping would mean being swallowed by silence. Phil Silvers died at 74 on November 1, 1985, in his sleep in Century City, California, from a heart attack. He was interred at Mount Sinai Memorial Park Cemetery in Los Angeles. His estimated net worth at death was about $1 million, stunningly modest for a man who once seemed to own television. Kathleen Freeman as Flo Schaefer. Kathleen Freeman was born on February 17, 1919 in Chicago. At 40 years old, she played Flo Schaefer, a sharp, comedic presence who could steal a scene with a single look, in the Beverly Hillbillies. She made audiences laugh effortlessly, yet her real life carried a far quieter weight. Her career began almost unbelievably early. At just 2 years old, she was already performing in her parents' vaudeville act, dancing before she could even understand the stage lights above her. By the time she attended UCLA to study music and train as a classical pianist, one unexpected laugh from an audience changed her path forever. Hollywood would later recognize her face in more than 100 films, including The Blues Brothers, 1980, yet she was repeatedly cast as the side character, the sharp-tongued maid, the stern teacher, rarely the star. The industry relied on her timing but rarely rewarded her with center stage. Her personal life remained largely private and unconventional for her era. Kathleen never married and had no children. She shared her life with longtime companion Helen Ramsey, a relationship described publicly in cautious terms at a time when openness carried professional risk. Even so, she kept working relentlessly, culminating in a Broadway triumph with The Full Monty in 2000, earning a Tony nomination. Then came the cruel reversal. Freeman was diagnosed with lung cancer while performing in The Full Monty. Though weakened, she continued until she was physically forced to withdraw from the production. The illness progressed rapidly, turning a long-awaited career peak into a final act marked by fragility instead of applause. Kathleen Freeman died on August 23, 2001, at age 78, from lung cancer at Lenox Hill Hospital. She was cremated, and her ashes were placed at Hollywood Forever Cemetery. Her estimated net worth at the time of her death was around $1 million, modest for someone who worked over 5 decades. Roy Roberts as John Cushing. Roy Roberts was born on March 19, 1906, in Tampa, Florida. At 57 years old, he played John Cushing, a commanding, authoritative figure in the Beverly Hillbillies. His presence alone could shift the tone of a scene, projecting power with minimal words. Growing up in modest circumstances in Florida, Roberts learned resilience early. He began in regional stock theater before fighting his way onto Broadway and eventually into Hollywood. Over more than 4 decades, he appeared in over 900 stage and screen productions, an astonishing number that reflected not stardom, but relentless work. He became the embodiment of executives, judges, bankers, and officials in shows like Bewitched and later films such as Chinatown, 1974. His stern face became instantly recognizable, even if his name did not. Roberts also battled heart problems in his later years. The demanding pace of his career, combined with personal strain, took a physical toll. Though he continued working steadily into the 1970s, his health quietly deteriorated, and the commanding figure audiences recognized began to carry unseen fragility. Roy Roberts died at 69 on May 28, 1975, from a heart attack at St. Vincent's Hospital in Los Angeles. He was buried at Greenwood Memorial Park in Fort Worth, Texas. His estimated net worth at the time of his death was around $1 million. The laughter may have faded, but the stories behind how the members of the Beverly Hillbillies cast tragically passed away still echo decades later. Fame brought them into our homes, but time quietly took them away, one by one. Which loss affected you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to uncover more untold stories behind classic TV legends, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with us for the next deep dive.